All right, let's do a show. Let's do a Monday show of inside coverage here on Yahoo. Happy to be home, truly. Happy to be home at the home office here in Southern California. I'm Andrew Siciliano. Thank you for being here. This is a Monday through Thursday endeavor. This is the how and the why, any and everything you need to know in the National Football League. If you're listening to us in podcast form, we thank you. Do the like and subscribe and the share thing, and we'll thank you for that. Put a comment on it. I'm told that does wonders as well. If you're watching the video form of this, like on a smart TV, we thank you for doing that. YahooSports.tv. I'm getting all my notes right looking over here. The Yahoo Sports Network, Andrew. Went to speech therapy as a kid for my R's. On all your fast TVs, like pick up the remote. You can find us also on the Yahoo YouTube page. Do that, please. And we thank you in advance. And we thank Charles Robinson in advance for the next 45 minutes or hours, whatever. I don't know how much time do you have, Charles, of putting up with a jet-lagged, yours truly, sleep-deprived, but happy to be here, full of caffeine. How the heck are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I want to know, on the plane, do you have your own pod? Were you in first class? Like, what were the accommodations like? I'm always curious about this.
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I appreciate you caring. Number two, most people listening and watching, and I really do mean this, and I know you know this as well, they would trade their whatever they do, and they may love their job, but they would trade what they do with what we do, which is get to talk about football all day and go to games.
Sure.
So, like, the complaining about the travel, I don't want to do. But I will say this. Was on the team plane, as I often do travel with the Browns, and everything is wonderful. No, I do not sit up in first class. That is saved for the coach and for the veteran players with some tenure. The pods are for them. I am with the staff in the back of the plane. However, it's a spacious wide body. It's a lovely 777. There's great catering. And
nice.
we do it so it's like window aisle on the way back there. So there's no one sitting next to you. I am not a large person. You may know this. I'm 6'4" on TV, but I'm not really 6'4". So I could sit in my seat on the window. I have my big neck pillow, and I've got the mask, and I put the hoodie up, and some non-narcotic sleep aid, like those little melatonin gummies, and I'm out. I am out. I slept the entire way home from London.
That's a great
Took
trip.
a 3-hour nap at a local hotel, and then hopped on the 7 a.m. from Cleveland to LA. Honestly, dude, I have no idea what day it is.
Wow. Hey, when you fly commercial, do you recline? I got to know.
You want to have this conversation? Hell yes, I do. Absolutely.
Oh,
are you kidding me?
Oh,
there's a
Andrew.
button. There's a button on the armrest. Everyone has one. Use it. Use it.
Yeah.
Use it.
Well, I'm 6'4" in real life, and I am built like a defensive tackle, so I do not like it when people recline into me.
Okay, but if
on commercial
when they do, doesn't it give you more room to recline yourself?
I refuse to recline. I won't do it. I just won't do it. I can't. I don't know why. I just can't. I can't bring myself to back myself up into someone else's world. I blame the airline, though. I don't blame
behind you.
If it's a kid, but you know what? Then you're just asking for your seat to get kicked and whatever else the kid is going to do on that flight. So, look, like I said, I blame their airline. I don't blame the patrons. They
so you think the button should be removed?
I think people should use it at their own discretion, but they should also be prepared to be judged. And I am judging you, Andrew.
Okay. In my future life, that's fine. In my future life, I am going, or maybe in the alternative universe, in the multiverse somewhere, I will host a travel podcast, mostly about turning MX points into miles and how you get your most bang for your buck out of your miles and all that. I'm really good at that. I'm a travel agent in my free time. But I will also ask, like, have you ever flown one of these cheapo international airlines, like, you know, one of the cheapo ones in Europe going, you know, short hops where the seats don't recline, where you truly have no leg room? Because those are miserable. If you want a world in which the buttons don't work or they're not even there and your seats cannot recline and you're upright like this. That world exists. Go over there and try
I
it
just need to move
because
to
it's
Europe,
not fun. You won't like it.
fly a Russian commuter flight, and that's what you're
Yes.
saying, basically.
Yes.
All right. Fair enough.
Okay.
I've derailed the podcast already.
They haven't. We have 13 more minutes in this segment to talk about things like Drake Maye and Stefon Diggs leading the Patriots to a thrilling 23-20 victory on Sunday Night Football in Buffalo, to give the Bills their first loss of the year, to give Stefon Diggs some sense of revenge, although I thought he handled it really well. He didn't really say anything incendiary. He didn't poke the bear. He looked like a guy who fired his team up, who is certainly playing his best game of the season, and this is his best game in a long, long time, who willed his team to victory along with his quarterback, and he wasn't starting fires. He was putting them out, and I thought that was a cool thing to see. I also think that, and I forget about think, this isn't, a huge headline. This was Drake Maye's coming out party. Truly, we saw a lot of it his rookie year, but we didn't see it consistently. This is the Drake Maye the Patriots thought and hoped they would be getting when they took him top 5 last year. And there's the old saying, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. What I saw last night, Charles, wasn't him just being the man and beating the man, but it was in many ways being and morphing into Josh Allen, particularly when he wrestles Daquan Jones and with his jersey getting pulled off his breastplate, is able to get that ball away and keep the team alive. And they pull the victory out when a rookie nails a 50-plus yard field goal. He morphed into a slightly smaller version of Josh Allen. And look, Josh has been doing this for a long, long time. Okay. He's given us some of the greatest playoff performances we've ever seen from a quarterback in a win or a loss. He's not Josh Allen, but the glimmer was there. To quote Marty Schottenheimer, there's a gleam, men, and we saw that last night from Drake.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you can even be a pretty close facsimile to Josh Allen, you're going to do pretty well in the NFL. He doesn't have the hose of an arm that Josh does. I mean, his arm's fine. Josh might have the best arm in the NFL. And, as you said, Josh is a little bit bigger, but you see why you love to have 6'4", 225, 230 pound quarterbacks who have mobility when, as you said, the Daquan Jones play where you're stiff arming like a 6'4", 330 defensive tackle. I mean, it was just to make the play that he did, to have the awareness to get the ball off before his knee touches the ground to Stefon Diggs, and then, Diggs being able in space to create with it. It was definitely a special moment. It's one of those ones that, we'll remember if we see him ascend to where the Patriots think he can ultimately, climb to amongst NFL quarterbacks. And man, the 2024 NFL draft, between Drake Maye, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, we'll see what happens with J.J. McCarthy. We'll see with Michael Penix. But, these guys have all had some moments. I mean, with all due respect to J.J. McCarthy, it was one quarter. But but Maye is that guy to me when I watch him. He is carrying over a lot of those traits from North Carolina, it feels like. And one of the big ones, I think, is also leadership. And what I thought was interesting about this game in particular, you talk about Diggs. Remember, when we came into the season, we were like, Stefon Diggs is going to play for Mike Vrabel. Like, how is that going to work? Because he's got such a strong personality. Can they mesh? Maye's, again, in his second year, is not, at this point, he's not that. It's not Tom Brady going up and down the sideline screaming at guys, right? And so how could they ultimately bring this all together? But you watched last night, the chemistry on the field was evident. They're getting the ball. Josh McDaniels, his scheme, they're getting the ball into Stefon Diggs' hands with space. He can turn, he can run. There's one play where, Maye, it was a bootleg. It kind of felt like it was off script. And you saw, it was a rollout to the right. And you saw Maye direct him, Diggs down the field. And that's where, Diggs had the beautiful sideline catch. Everything about it was a great win, I think, for them, a program win. And afterward, to see Mike Vrabel award Diggs a game ball and, Diggs to finally really emote in that moment and show how happy he was. This is what, you talk to coaches, you talk to GMs. This is the one where you text them and you say, hey, felt like a program win for you guys. Definitely feels like
Yeah.
that for the Patriots.
100%. And to see, you mentioned the play, the scramble drill where he's moving to his right, to see the strength on the sideline falling out of bounds of Stefon Diggs with his hands there. I mean, that ball didn't move. That was the thing of beauty.
Yeah.
And I love guys who are authentic. Authentic,
He is
but
that.
classy as well. Right? I mean, Stefon has always been authentic. I wouldn't say he was ever not classy, but look, he's had his moments where he gets fired up, right? But he admitted to Melissa after the game, Melissa Stark, NBC on the field, 100% this is personal. I don't mind guys saying that. Right? He didn't take shots. He just said, yes, it was personal. You saw that embrace before as well with Sean McDermott. It was a little bit awkward. They were holding each other for a while, and then Sean, they broke it, and then he grabbed him back. It was like, no, I got to finish what I'm saying. And I'm sure it was all positive, right? But like, no, come back here.
Yeah.
That was cool. But I also find it, and this really is the day-to-day and week-to-week, really, NFL world we live in. It's hysterical now how people are going through the Patriots schedule saying, oh, yeah, I mean, look at this. Win.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they might host a home playoff game. I'm going to pull the schedule up here. I'm looking down at my laptop.
They're 11-6.
This
Andrew.
is a
just
program.
Write it in. They're 11-6. They're going 11-6. That's what everyone says now.
It is clearly a program-changing win. They're 3-2. A lot of people had the Patriots before the season. A lot of this was faith in Mike Vrabel, understandably. Oh, yeah, this is a playoff team. Guys, they're 3-2 now. They go to New Orleans. This just in. New Orleans has won a game. The Dome is never easy. Then they go to Tennessee. This just in. The Titans have somehow won a game. Then they go face the Browns. They still have a defense, and Dillon Gabriel was promising yesterday. 2 touchdowns against a very good defense. Didn't turn the ball over. Quinshon Judkins is the real deal. I mean, let's not just check. Then they get Atlanta. Michael Penix has got a hose. They got a pass rush now. Then they go to Tampa. The Patriots have turned a corner. Don't tell me, however, that they're going to go 100 miles an hour with 2 hands on the wheel down the straightaway. Let's go baby steps here.
Yeah, and Andrew, that's not even factoring in injuries, right? Injuries are going to happen.
Right.
And we saw that, Antonio Gibson tears his ACL, right? So now Travion Henderson, it goes from being a 3-back rotation to a 2-back rotation. Henderson has had some issues this season early with pass pro problems, which is completely wild considering he was considered the best pass pro back in the draft this year. That's something he's going to have to clean up. Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic coming out of Ohio State. That was just an A++ area of his game. He's going to have to show that he can turn a corner in that respect. And, frankly, he's going to have to show he can consistently do what Gibson did. Run it between the tackles, run with toughness, not just to be a speed guy looking for the edge, and then factor in the pass game. That's, it's not a small injury for the Patriots, particularly when you consider, Mike Vrabel, if he has the ability to run the football and play good defense, he prefers to lean into that. So you take a 3-man backfield, you shorten it to 2. We talked about Diggs. Look at their depth chart. And no offense to Keyshawn Boutte or, some of the other wideouts they have. But if Diggs were to get hurt, and I saw this in Houston last year, it's significant, the drop-off. Now, Houston at least had Nico Collins there. But, if Diggs were to suffer an injury, you're now staring at pass, receiving options for Drake Maye that significantly fall off in terms of having that number one dependable guy who's got chemistry with Drake Maye. So I understand people are excited. I get it. This is kind of what we do now. Every week is a season into itself, and we fly and bottom out from one week to the next depending on what a team looks like. But yeah, I heard people saying, oh, it's 11-6, go through. It's definitely going to be a 10, 11 win season. Let's just see if they can hold it together injury wise. And we also don't know. Look, I know the division right now is kind of a mess. Teams are going to rise and fall. It's just kind of where we're at right now. I don't think the Jets are going to look like this all season. I doubt the Colts. You look across the rest of the league and some of the teams that are still on their schedule. I mean, honestly, the Browns, to me, watching Gabriel play, I'm like, hey, all these rookies that are contributing right now, by December, they're basically going to be they're out of their rookie phase. Now they're more veterans, And if Gabriel can be a calming influence on that offense and not turn the ball over, I don't know. Cleveland pretty tough to me.
Well, we weren't going to go there. We didn't have it mapped out in this segment, but you opened the door. I'll go there real quick on the Browns. If you had told me that they had a chance to win that game and all they had to do was get a one-armed Carson Wentz, because that left shoulder is pretty banged up, there was some doubt that he would open the third quarter. It was going to be Max Brosmer time. That the Browns, all they had to do was get a one-armed Carson Wentz off the field and deny him going 80 yards. I don't gamble, but I mean, I would have taken those odds there. But the number one defense in the NFL coming into the week against a banged up offensive line couldn't get Carson Wentz and the Vikings off the field. They ended up winning the game. Coverage bust at the end there, cover two, whether you got to redirect them off the ball, who knows? Jordan Addison got free. Carson Wentz and everything was getting out quickly, found him, and they won the game. It was disheartening, as disheartening a loss as I can remember in a long time because of what you said there. Quinshon got it going. He had a 50-yard touchdown called back, or his numbers would have been even more. It was a legit hold call, but he outran people, and he had that 50-yard touchdown. He still had the Browns' first 100-yard rushing performance from a running back since that 2023 comeback in Baltimore, in which Deshaun Watson hurt both his shoulder and his ankle. Jerome Ford had it that day, so it had been a long time. Gabriel didn't turn the ball over. They're still not stretching the field, but the kid met the moment. He looks the part. Might not be the biggest guy, but as Myles Garrett said Friday, he leads and he gets onto the field with his chest out. He's comfortable with who he is, and he played pretty well. But like what you said, how there could be turning points here. Charles, if they had won that game, the Browns, that is, and they should have, then they're coming home 2-3. That 7.5, 8-hour flight that we're on feels a lot better. Yep. And you feel good going to Pittsburgh this week. Now, look, that's a whole different task and a whole different challenge. But you feel good at 2-3 in a division with two really stunningly bad teams how about this? Teams in stunningly bad and unexpected situations like the Ravens and the Bengals. You have a chance here, and you still do. The season's not over. But how things turn so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look, it didn't look too big for him, Dillon Gabriel. I think overseas game is your first start. Brian Flores, loves to disguise. And I never looked at him and thought, he looks flustered. He looks out of sorts here. It felt very calm. He felt very commanding. For a first start, despite the loss, it was, I thought, better than what I expected. I thought this was a little bit of a danger game. And to me, I thought, okay, this is a guy that can grow, as they move forward. And also the thing too, it wasn't like the offense. I didn't feel like it was like, hey, it's all 10 yards in it. Like, he felt like he was definitely pushing it a little bit at times. And again, I keep looking at that roster and the rookies that are all making there's a ton of guys making significant contributions that are rookies on this team right now. And if they stay healthy, rookies should, unless they hit a wall, that proverbial kind of, hey, when you start to get to 12, 13 games, usually their college season's over. Well, not for Quinshon Judkins, right? Not for Mason Graham.
He missed one.
I mean, there's some of these guys, have played elongated college football seasons. I think it's a team that in December, when the young guys have got, a lot of games under their belt, can start to get better. I feel like Cleveland, even with the loss, I still feel like Cleveland's got a bit of a bright spot to work with in terms of the talent they've had.
I agree with you. All right, let's do 2 quick minutes here on the Bengals. Zac Taylor left the door open today after a dreadful first 3 quarters from Jake Browning of the Bengals yesterday. Just dreadful. They were down huge heading into the fourth quarter. It was 28-3 before they eventually lose to the Lions, and you get a bunch of, I don't call them garbage yards and touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but they come back a little bit and make the score a little bit more interesting. But the fact is, they have a quarterback problem right now, and Zac Taylor on Monday left the door open, Charles, to a change. The options on the roster are basically Brett Rippon, 2-2 as a career starter. He has not proven to be the guy wherever he is. And then Mike White, who had a 400-yard game. Look, Mike White's had some big games, some big statistical games in his NFL career, starting briefly for the Jets and the Dolphins. If I had to make a change in-house, I'd go Mike White. But do they look out of house? And if so, where? Like, what do they do?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, White's probably. I think back to the Jets, where when things were going south with Zach Wilson there, and White was sort of a steadying influence when he came in there because everything was pure chaos. But that's probably what I would lean into in house. But as you said, I mean, it depends. What are you trying to accomplish here? If you're sitting there and saying we're 2-3, this season's not over. We can fight all the way to the end of the season and hope that we can get Joe Burrow back here in December and then move on from there. Well, then I think you have to go and shop for an accomplished quarterback. So I would call Atlanta and say, what's going on with Kirk Cousins? Where are you at with this situation with him? What would that conversation look like? I would call the New York Giants and I would say, look, you got two backups there. And Jackson Dart does not look like, it's a situation where you're going to sit him back down. He's got your starting job. Does Russ want to go and start, for the Bengals and then maybe take a back seat to Burrow later in the season? Certainly I think Jameis would be up for that. Those are probably the first two calls I would make just to see what the situation is in New York and Atlanta. But look, the Bengals got to look within. They got to figure this out here because, as you said, I mean, the quote unquote comeback against the Lions, it wasn't garbage time. Terrion Arnold went out, and their secondary just fell apart. And they're making big plays left and right with Terrion Arnold off the field. And I think that kind of changed the tone a little bit for Jake Browning, but he has not been. It's unfortunate. I thought he was that player we saw before. He's filled in the past and been an adequate player. He has not been that for the Bengals. And look at 2-3. I don't think he just waved the white flag here. And I kind of feel like the in-house options would be a little bit of waving the white flag.
Yeah, I would go get Jameis. You want to stretch the field. You want to get it. You want to get it to Jamar and T. Higgins. Jameis has shown he can do that. He's also going to throw it to the other team frequently. It's kind of why we love him. Look at that. Yeah. Who mocked this up? Look at that. Look at that.
And now that Andrew, he's always been a net It's funny to me, like every locker room that guy's ever been in, everyone loves him. That's also that
I can
net
attest
positive
to it, man.
You're adding that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can attest to it. I saw it firsthand last year. He is a giver of energy. It's not hokey. That is truly who he is. He is a give. Look, there are plenty of players who are loud, who can also suck the energy out of the room. Not that they're negative, but sometimes it's just like, oh my God, stop, right? He's not one of those people. He is just a giver of energy. And sometimes a giver of picks and turnovers. But to know him is to love him.
But it's fun.
I would go get him. Yeah, I would truly go get him. All right, coming up next, did Jonathan Gannon cross the line yesterday in Arizona? And what the Cardinals coach said a day later about his confrontation on the sideline with the player that clearly made a mistake. Also coming up, I should have teased this earlier, Myles Garrett will join us. Yes, Myles Garrett. That is later on Inside Coverage. It's Inside Coverage. It is the how and the why of any and everything you need to know around the National Football League. We are still, Charles Robinson, trying to figure out the how of why the Arizona Cardinals somehow blew a 15-point fourth quarter lead and handed the Titans their very first win of the season. It included a play in which Kyler Murray, not ready for the snap, miscommunication with the center, hit him in the face mask, and it popped his head back. It was a blooper reel kind of, not top 10 kind of play, but it also included a play in which it looked as if the Cardinals had put the game away. Emari Demercado. I have so much trouble with that name. TCU running back from LA. Emari Demercado busted free for what looked like a game-sealing touchdown, and he did the dreaded drop it before the goal line deal. Now, let me say this. Let me rephrase this. I think he actually got it across the goal line. Am I the only one who thinks this?
Did too.
I was in London.
I did too. I thought it was still in his hand.
I thought it was still in his hand. Like the idea that they're telling me that it was, as he reached it out, it had somehow already separated from his hand. If they have some kind of super zoom pixelation to see that, I don't see it. I don't think he dropped it.
No, I thought the same thing. I thought, although it was shifting in his hand, it was starting to roll out of his hand. It was in his hand.
I
And
agree.
it's not out of his possession until it's not touching his hand, in my mind. And so I felt like, if we're going to treat the end zone, the front of that line, like it's a wall, right? And there's a laser there, and if you pierce it and that ball's anywhere in your possession, that's a touchdown. I felt like, regardless, it's just, I think first time I ever saw that happen, I think I saw Deshaun Jackson, the U.S. Army All-American game,
right,
drop it when he was going in. And since then, every time it happens, Malachi Corley, obviously what the Colts receiver, I'm losing my mind right now. I can't remember that did it last week.
A.D.
Mitchell. Yeah. And then, I'm just like, how does this keep happening? Where guys, and I can tell you this, I've gone through Arizona. On my camp tours, I spent time with Jonathan Gannon, considerable amount of time with him. And that is not one guy that I would want to piss off. I mean, he is very intense. And I remember when he first got there, I was talking to a player, and obviously he was coming in. They were taking over the Cliff Kingsbury regime. And the player said to me, "Hey, man, recess is over." He's like, "I can tell you that. Like, it is not, there's a lot of stuff that used to fly. He's like, about half of it's completely gone." And he said, and the other half wasn't bad at all, and so he is just a super intense dude. Great when you're making him happy, but if you're pissing him off, I mean, it is not someone I would want to have to deal with. And we saw what the reaction was afterward.
Yeah, so let's get to that. We all can agree that Emari Demercado, what he did was sloppy, and it cost his team the game. And considering it had happened the week before in another game, like, you can't do that. Like, you just cannot do that. He screwed up, right? He owned it afterwards. He screwed up. I could also say Jonathan Gannon screwed up because he went ballistic on the sideline. And that's what the world is talking about today. They're not talking about the fact that, another guy dropped the ball. No. They're talking about a video, and you can see it right here. I mean, he got up in his face. I mean, it's hard to see the level of volcanic explosion there, but he got up at his face, and a lot of people think he hit him. And I don't mean punched him in the face. Don't get me wrong. But there's clearly some physical contact there, and that is now what people remember. They're not going to remember that the Cardinals blew another lead and they were beating out another late field goal, and man, this team seemingly has been turning the corner, but they keep losing in these key moments at the end of the game when they can't play all three phases of complementary football and get off the field in a division that is hyper competitive, and many people thought they could be a factor this year. They still are, don't get me wrong. They're going to remember Jonathan Gannon for all this. Years from now, this is not Dennis Green. What was the Dennis Green? We let him off the hook. What was you played to? No, that's Herman Edwards.
Yeah, we let him off the hook.
Crown him. Y'all want to crown their ass? They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. So y'all want to crown them? Crown their ass. Whatever. Yeah, that was after primetime Bears came back and beat them in Arizona. Anyway, did he cross the line is the question. Jonathan Gannon at his press conference late Monday afternoon said that when he woke up on Monday morning, he knew that he was wrong and that he apologized to the player, he apologized to Demercado, and he apologized to the team in their Monday morning meeting. He's got to own that one. And he's a good enough coach to come back from this. This is not a career-defining moment for Jonathan Gannon. But in 2025, you can't do that.
Yeah. And, look, it helps that he's the coach of the Arizona Cardinals, not the New York Jets, right? Like, it's not, I think, in a different market, maybe this would have been a little more intense after the game once people had sort of seen, what unfolded there. And you could tell, when he was unloading, you got two offensive linemen there, and you can see, it felt like there was some uneasiness, almost like the players, like, oh man, what's going to happen here? And, look, we've seen, hey, Andy Reid shoved Travis Kelce this year, right? Like, we've seen some interesting kind of
Travis
exchanges
Kelce shoved
between,
Andy Reid last year too.
yeah, and Travis Kelce shoved Andy Reid, right? And so we've seen some interesting sideline interactions. This was, it felt right up to the line there, certainly with the amount of anger that he displayed. And like I said, he's an extremely intense guy. I'm glad he came out and he owned it and he said he apologized and he's trying to move forward there. I do think some of that too, frankly, is, for that offense, the margin of error is so razor thin. Mm-hmm. Like they're playing with the same set of offensive guys they had last year. They're down Trey Benson, they're down James Conner. So the backfield's already thin. When you have a moment like that to salt the game away, that's it. That game's over. He crosses, they score a touchdown. The Titans do not come back from that.
Over.
But instead it triggers just a complete mess. I mean, and then he, after that, he's watching, a defensive player fumble into the end zone after an interception, and Tyler Lockett jumps on it for a touchdown. It was the most bizarre set of circumstances, and I think I saw someone strung together all the lowlights to the Benny Hill music, and I'm like, yeah, that's about right. That's how this one felt.
Sacks.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's unfortunate too, because I think, this is a team that has potential. It's got a lot of young guys. I think they're building it the right way. So to hand, and I think they really did hand Brian Callahan his first win, is a very difficult, thing to grapple with now, particularly like you said, they're in the NFC West. It's really tough to get wins.
Yeah. Back in my Fox Sports radio days, the yakety sax music from Benny Hill. That was the easy go-to Monday morning. Like some team blew a big fourth quarter lead. You string the highlights together, you throw the Benny Hill music behind it. That was a guaranteed chuckle winner for the wacky morning show. That was a good one. So we were flying back from London, and I was watching a little bit of that game on the plane, and it put me to sleep. Well, so did the melatonin and the mask and the hood and all that. I passed out. Anyway, we wake up when we land in Cleveland, and my buddy Nathan, 2 rows behind me, like as you're coming out of that deep, like transoceanic slumber, right? Like you're wiping the sleep out of your eyes. All I hear from my buddy Nathan, my partner in the booth, 2 rows behind me, going, "Oh my God!" And then the ball hit Kyler in the mask, and then there was a pick, and then there was like a fumble, and then there was like, "Oh my God, stop!" Like what? Huh? What? And then like when you finally see the highlights, you say, "Wow!" I mean, that's as bad a loss against not only a team that hadn't won a game yet, but against a team that is probably atop the big board in Vegas for the number 1 overall pick right now.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew, the rookie quarterback, number 1 pick a week ago, is at the podium saying, "We ass." Like he's literally saying, like, I mean, he's calling himself and his team ass 1 week earlier. And again, when you're down 21-3, I'm like, yeah, nothing's changed. Like I was texting with someone in Tennessee, and I'm like, is Brian going to survive? Like, do you think Brian's going to be able to survive this? Like, is this it? Like, are we closing the book now on Brian Callahan tonight? And instead, everything flips. And I don't want to take anything away I thought Cam Ward actually had his best game of the season. I thought there were times he had some pretty big passes, showed a connection with Ridley in some important spots. And I will say one other thing. I don't know, in a late game situation, I wonder if Gannon, when he looks at the film, will regret man-to-man singled up coverage with no safety help on Calvin Ridley in a fourth quarter situation where you just can't let a player get behind your defense. And so
for a guy that loves playing zone.
What's that?
For a guy that loves playing zone as well.
Yeah, for a guy that loves playing zone. Right. Yeah. And so to me, I think a lot of, factors went into it, not just the horrific, fumble into the end zone and the Demercado mistake and the ball off Kyler's face. I'm curious to see how Arizona responds to this, honestly, because this is probably the roughest. I think it's the roughest loss that Jonathan Gannon, Monty Austin for that tandem's taken since they've gotten there, because you just can't lose to this Titans team, and you can't lose in that fashion.
Yeah, and they lost on TNF and gut wrenching fashion to the Seahawks in a division game at home the previous week. So they are well rested coming in to this one. All right, this one is not a laughing matter as we switch now to the Mark Sanchez story. Mark Sanchez, I don't want to look down here to get my notes right, is facing a felony charge now for an altercation that kind of rocked the football and media world on Saturday. When Charles, the news broke, it was around dinner time in London. The news broke, oh my God, Mark Sanchez, and it was midday back here in the States during college football. Everyone's watching college football,
Yeah.
huge Saturday in college football. Mark Sanchez, right, the former top 5 pick, the former, All-American at SC, like Mark Sanchez. Everyone knows Mark Sanchez. He was in town to call the game on Fox, the Colts and the Raiders, that he had been stabbed somehow late Friday night and was in the hospital in critical condition in Indianapolis. And all of us around the football world say, wait, what? Like, how on earth is the smiling, happy, gregarious Mark Sanchez? How would he get in a fight? How would he take anyone off? How on earth would anything like this happen? And then you also get to because Charles, I know you can relate to this. All of us in the football and media world with the combine in Indy every year and with a Super Bowl there, with Final Fours there over the years.
Yeah, we know
Like,
Indy.
honestly,
Yeah.
man, and covering the Colts as well, I feel like I've spent half my adult life in Indianapolis. And I feel like I've spent half my adult life in Indianapolis walking back from all those steakhouses and late night joints and St. Elmo's to the very hotel or hotels near which this incident happened. This one was behind the Westin. I've stayed there a dozen times. It's right down the street from the Marriott and the JW. Either way, I've never felt unsafe in Indianapolis late at night, walking home, even after a few pops. Like, what on earth happened? And then a few hours later, and I'm with football and media people, the story starts to change. And it turns out that maybe Mark Sanchez allegedly is the assailant here, is the attacker here, is the instigator here. I stress allegedly. And you just sit back, and again, I'm with football people in London, and you just go like, wait a minute. Like, what? Charles, I hope he is okay. I hope the guy driving the truck is okay. This is the most bizarre story that I have ever heard.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was shocked. I didn't. Dawn actually saw it, and she said Mark Sanchez got stabbed, and I was like, "What?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "That." I said, "The Mark Sanchez," and she said, "Yeah, in Indianapolis." And it was funny because I had the same reaction you did, which is to be, I have spent 2 weeks of my life at minimum every year for like 20 years in Indianapolis for the combine, and the same deal as you walk from St. Elmo's to the JW or wherever you're staying. And I was stunned. I couldn't believe, because I asked her, I said, where was he? Where is he? She said Indianapolis. And I was completely, floored. And then the same situation as it changes, you're like, okay, things start to change. It's more clarity, and sounds like, from reading reports of this, that there's a lot of video of what exactly unfolded. Now there's a lawsuit in play from the victim, I think, is suing both Fox and Mark Sanchez. And, this is going to be interesting and unfortunate to see, how this ultimately unfolds, but it's already unfortunate. I mean, it's just, it's shocking. It's just shocking. Like, I couldn't believe it when I heard
it. Shocking, stunning, bizarre, sad. Really sad comes to mind as well on so many levels. Mark Sanchez went from a hospital bed to jail. I mean, that sentence alone, it strains credulity. I just don't, I can't wrap my brain around that. And stressing here, everything is alleged. He is innocent until proven guilty. I think I want to give a tip of the cap to Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn stepped in and he told the story on Fox Sports Radio on Monday morning. He does a daily show there. He was doing Big Noon Kickoff there in Ann Arbor, and right before the show started, he got a call and said, without a lot of details, "Hey, can you do the game tomorrow in Indianapolis?" And his first reaction was like, "Wait, what? Like, I'm not prepared to do that." Brady does a national show. He certainly watches the NFL. He knows the NFL. He talks about the NFL every day. But it's one thing to do a radio show. It's another thing to, hey, put on the headset and call a national broadcast for two NFL teams in which you have two passionate fan bases who are going to be on you, who want to hear stories. They want to know that you're impartial and know these two teams well up and down, that you've done the work, you've done the prep, that you could give this game the respect that it deserves. And he thought about it. I was like, I don't know, can I do this? And then he said about his wife and the family back at home, like, can they handle a Sunday? His wife, the kids, like they probably had stuff planned. I got to get home. I can't go straight to Indy. I need to watch some film. So he went home on Saturday, had said, yes, this is the right thing to do. Went home on Saturday, watched the film, but then the production meetings had already been done. Like they had already spoken, both coaches and the coordinators, with Mark Sanchez and Chris Myers on Friday. So he had catching up to do. You can't necessarily redo those production meetings. So he gets to the stadium. He's got to get down on the field. And look, it's not digging ditches. It's calling a football game. But there really is a lot of work that goes into this. So he's down on the field trying to find guys that he knows to get some info on these two teams. And as Brady pointed out on the radio this morning, Christina Pink is out of action, their normal sideline reporter. So they didn't have a sideline reporter to add layers. So it's more on the analyst to tell the stories. And then the game got out of hand. If it's a tight game in the fourth quarter, you're not telling stories. You're not unpacking your notebook here, right? You're not talking about that time when this guy was a kid and he, went to a football camp and met his favorite player. None of that. In the fourth quarter, if it's a close game, you're just calling the game. Down and distance and strategy and what do you do here on third and long? This game was a blowout quickly. And there's another story here about how bad the Raiders are, right? But this game was a blowout, and now Brady's got to empty the notebook, and he didn't have time to write the notebook. All that said, he did a phenomenal job, phenomenal. And I hope he gets another shot at it, because that is not an easy assignment at all.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, what if this had happened closer to the game? Like, it never occurred to me that you wouldn't have, I mean, I've never called a game, obviously. You have all the experience in that realm, but I think in my mind, I always assumed that there's someone at the ready, right? Like if something happens the morning of game day and for some reason one of the analysts in the booth can't be there, I think I always assumed there's a third option. There's a pinch hitter always waiting. And this to me showcased that that's not always really the case.
I've had some close calls with travel before where it's like
yeah.
Last year I had a Saturday night kickoff in NBC, Ohio State, for NBC in East Lansing, Ohio State, and Michigan State. In East Lansing, a night game, and then I had a 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific kickoff the next day in Vegas for the Browns and the Raiders. Yeah, and you're at the airport. I had two tickets purchased, right? Like two flights out of Detroit on Sunday morning, like whichever one is taken off, I'm getting on, and we made it. Yeah, but good job, Brady Quinn. Coming up, Myles Garrett's going to join us. Also, coming up, is John Harbaugh right in sticking with his defensive coordinator? This is Inside Coverage. Joining Inside Coverage now, the man who is tied for the league lead in TFLs, tackles for a loss. He led the league a year ago with 22 of them. He is back from London, landing right around 1:15 in the morning, which didn't feel good for anybody. Myles Garrett, how you feeling? How are you?
No day off. As far as watching film, getting cardio, working out, there are no days off. Trying to make sure that we're ready for the next opponent.
Myles, it's never fun to fly home after a loss like that one, which was obviously frustrating beyond belief, one that got away at the end of the game. How do you make sense of what happened yesterday at Tottenham?
There were just no plays we needed to make. and that's part of the game. You can't point to one specific player, one specific drive. You've got to make them when they're there and capitalize. Of course, as a defender, you want to snuff that drive out at the end, but it's more than that, and that's just a crescendo, and we have to be better. We have to execute.
What'd you think of Dillon Gabriel in his first start?
Like he is in practice, composed, optimistic. He's stepping up the offense like he's stepping up the defense. And just being a vocal leader at such a young age and being so mature is something that we're glad to see from him.
Backing up here to the whole thing with London, this was your first international game back in 2017 when the Browns played at Twickenham, actually, against the Vikings. You were in the protocol, so you didn't make the trip. I know you talked Friday to the media over there about the possibility of playing a game in Japan. Roger Goodell had said that he wants to expand the game to Asia. Japan seems like the logical one. Myles, if and when we get to every team playing at least one international game every year, after finally doing it, how do you think that whole thing will work?
Well, looking forward to see how it evolves. I know Roger talked about having everyone have a game abroad. Not sure how that would look. Seeing as some teams would go, England, some would probably go Mexico or Brazil, and others would go Japan, and it's a lot on guys' bodies, especially sleep schedules and getting back right. In order to play that next week at a very high level, but I can't lie. The opportunity of doing something like that for a different fan base and bringing the game even more international, bringing it worldwide is something that excites all of us.
And now back from London, you guys have to move on. And next up is not an easy one. It is a well-rested Steelers team. You faced Aaron Rodgers back in 2021. It was your first time, your only time facing him. It was Christmas Day. You didn't get to him because he was getting the ball out quickly, which is kind of what he's doing now in Pittsburgh, by the way. How do you guys turn the page and move on to the Steelers?
Well, it'll probably be pretty similar to how they treated me in Lambeau. There'll be a lot of quicks, some chips, trying to make sure they get the ball out to their playmakers, which they have a good amount now with some of the acquisitions that they've made, and seeing other guys develop. And we just have to make sure that we're applying pressure, as quickly as possible. And that'll come from the interior. Those guys get into his face, batting down balls, trying to get him frustrated. But myself as well, getting off those chips, those doubles, and getting back into the fight. And I know he'll try to sling it out wide, batting down some balls myself, and making taking care of those easy throws, myself or with the linebackers and DBs. That'll help make him extend those plays, and then we have to get busy as a front seven.
Myles Garrett, we appreciate you. Stay healthy. See you soon.
See you soon.
That is Myles Garrett. He and the Cleveland Browns will bus the 2 bus trips here, surrounded by a trip to London, bus to Pittsburgh for the game coming up week 6 at Acrisure Charles Robinson, as the Steelers are coming off their bye after the win in London. The AFC North is not what we expected in any way, shape, or form. You have the Steelers at 3-1.
It's a mess.
And then you just have like this mosh pit of mediocrity. You have the banged up Bengals without their quarterback that we talked about earlier. They have 2 wins. The Browns have 1 win. The Ravens have 1 win, which is just absurd here. The Ravens, Charles, after losing to the Texans and giving up 44 points to the Texans, by the way, the offensively challenged Texans here, they've given up 177 points, the Ravens have. So that's through 5 games. They're the first team in the Super Bowl era to give up 37 points or more in 4 of their first 5. And they are on pace, Charles, which is just absurd. The Baltimore Ravens are on pace to give up over 600 points. Nobody ever has done that. is John Harbaugh, and I know there are injuries and a long list and expensive ones, is John Harbaugh doing the right thing to stick with his defensive coordinator, Zach Orr?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because we don't know how they're breaking down the film internally, right? Like what mistakes are being made that can be pinned on the roster and having to go with, backup players, right? Are guys making mistakes simply because either they're not seasoned veterans or they're being thrust into roles that are too big for them right now? And I think you have to factor that in. And, but is it coaching? That's the question you ask here. Is there something wrong schematically with the game that Zach Orr is calling? And I'll say this, when you go back to Lions game, there's one play in my mind that has stuck out about the Ravens that it's unsettling to me. There was a play in that game where David Montgomery rips off a long run. But prior to the run, the Lions get to the line of scrimmage and Sam Laporta is lined up on the left side. It's an unbalanced line, but he's lined up on the left. And he motions all the way to the right, and he sets up on the right side of the offensive line. And you're looking at the all 22, and you're staring at the Ravens, and you're going, wait a minute. So the line was unbalanced to the left. Now he's moved. It's unbalanced to the right. And the Ravens didn't move. Nothing changed. The linebackers didn't move. The defensive line didn't shift. The shading didn't change. All the gap assignments remained exactly the same. That can't happen when you have an unbalanced line that moves from left to right. Something needs to change with the defense to properly, engage the line, basically flip-flopping from one side to the other. And because it didn't change, you see Laporta gap seals on a defensive end. You get the guard flows up. You get Penei Sewell. Next thing you know is on Roquan Smith, and David Montgomery's off to the races. And that to me clearly is a moment where something broke down. Something broke down between the coaching and the players. That's a moment that if that is something that is happening where you're not seeing guys shift, they're either a call's not getting in or someone on the defense is not recognizing that, hey, here's a pre-snap motion. We need to react to that motion appropriately. Then you're talking about getting into coaching, and then I think maybe the narrative changes. But again, I think I trust John Harbaugh to make the right decision for now. It doesn't mean it can't change later in the season.
Yeah, the narrative, like when you go through the preseason and you like if you played the game or did the exercise, like what are the craziest scenarios that you could possibly cook up heading into week 6? The Ravens being 1-4 and being on pace to give up an historic amount, like a record setting in the 106-year history of the National Football League amount of points. Never in my craziest dreams would I have ever come up with that, and it would have been a Ravens fan nightmare. I understand there are injuries, and Matabike's out for the year, and that doesn't sound good. And Roquan, you just mentioned, is banged up, and the secondary is banged up, and you had a rookie and Teddy Bernard wearing the green dot yesterday. Look, there are a lot of things going wrong. I was told that last year when Zach Orr, who is a first-year DC, when things weren't going well, look, you bring in Dean Pease. That's what Dean Pease has done the last decade. He comes in, he's kind of the fixer, and they trim down what was a very, very big defensive playbook. They trimmed it down, they simplified things, and that defense started playing well again. Chuck Pagano is in the Dean Pease role this year, although he has been there all through training camp. Can they trim it down? Is that the issue this year? I don't know. And again, I know there are injuries. And on the offensive side of the ball, you're not doing your defense any favors when Cooper Rush is starting instead of Lamar Jackson, and you're missing pieces there as well. Patrick Ricard, they've had obviously injuries on the offensive line. Honestly, when I saw them up close a couple of weeks ago, the interior of their offensive line, while healthy, was not playing well. The Browns' D-line really did whatever it wanted to against the interior of that offensive line and shut down the Ravens' run game. It's not all on Zach Orr, but in years past when there was a glaring issue, John Harbaugh did something. He didn't fire people, but look, he got a hand on it pretty quickly. This I think could be this is going to be an interesting one to watch if he can, let's say without Lamar next week, who knows, can right the ship, because there are a lot of people watching this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if that's getting back to running the football on first and second down consistently. That's something they haven't done at least not all season long. It's, something fundamentally is going to have to change. Either, you're going to have to shift gears offensively and try to possess the ball longer. I don't know. I don't know how at this point, given the injuries, how you can give the defense the appropriate break that it needs, or change it fundamentally without, as you said, making some sort of alteration to the coaching or the game calling, or, sometimes you take guys and you move them down to the sideline or you move them up to the box. I don't know what exactly in the sauce could get this right, but it's a stunner. And as you said, I never would have thought at this point, if you had told me you're going to hit week 6 and the Ravens defense is going to be worse than the Bengals defense, I would have said you're crazy.
Well, Charles, I had people come at me last week because last week I said the 2025 Baltimore Ravens have become the 2024 Cincinnati Bengals. And that is they're going to score 30 and lose. And that's all we talked about last year with Joe Burrow. Man, the defense is letting them down. Joe's scoring 30 and they're losing. Isn't that wild and absurd and unfair to Joe Burrow? Well, now this is the Ravens. Their defense is giving up 30 every week. Now, this week without Lamar Jackson, but the Ravens have become last year's Bengals. And that is just really hard to wrap my head around. And guess what? It's just the Rams coming to town this week. The Rams with a little more prep time after a disappointing home loss on Thursday Night Football. They get another West Coast to East Coast trip. Last time was Philadelphia, where they should have beaten the Eagles and they didn't. This time it's Baltimore. It feels like a trap, right? Because the Ravens still have enough talent to beat anybody. That is one of the more interesting games, I think, on this week, or really any week's schedule over the next month. This has been fun today, other than the Mark Sanchez conversation with Charles, I think we agree is an awkward one. This week, I think Sunday's games and even Thursday's game is a friendly reminder that anytime you think you have the NFL figured out, you don't have the NFL figured out.
Yeah, just come back in November and we'll be completely turned around in all of this. The Ravens will have made a run. The Patriots will have cratered.
Right. And Cam Ward will be on his way to not only Rookie of the Year, but MVP as well.
Only consistent thing is Andrew will still be reclining in his airline seat.
Freezing cold takes. Yes, I will be. I'm going to recline in this amazingly uncomfortable chair that I bought thinking it looked good with the desk that you cannot see. And it does, but it is amazingly uncomfortable. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside Coverage. That is Charles. I am Andrew. Thank you for listening, watching, liking, subscribing. We'll see you and we'll talk to you Tuesday.